Okay, hi. It's Mrs. Losick, and I'm here with Lee Dawson, admissions counselor at Bucknell University in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, actually my alma mater. So I'm excited. Welcome. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and the school you represent?
Yeah, so a little about my background. I came to higher education having worked in the business industry for a number of years. I worked in like a software program. We designed software for schools. But during that time, I got a chance to know a lot of principals, a lot of superintendents, a lot of students. And at that time, I realized that students had a great need to understand the application process. And that's what propelled me into higher education. Incidentally, my undergraduate degree is not in higher education. It's in nursing, believe it or not, but my master's degree is in higher education. So long story short, I pursued my degree or my work in higher education, having worked for a Penn State affiliate before coming to Bucknell. But that has been my passion, is to work with students to really help them understand the process. When I was a lot of your students' age, I didn't really feel like I had good guidance. And so what I feel like students really need is an understanding of what kind of classes they should be taking. How can they best prepare themselves to look at a more selective school like a Bucknell University? Let me just tell you a little bit about Bucknell, who Bucknell is. Bucknell's been in existence since 1846, so it's been around for a long time, over 175 years. But throughout that time, it's focused a lot of its work on being a classic liberal arts institution, focusing a lot on innovation and developing groundbreaking ways to help students become educated. What distinguishes Bucknell, as far as in addition to being a selective institution, is the sense of connectivity that it has with students and doing a lot of work with students in hands-on opportunities. One of the key things we like about Bucknell is that students get a unique opportunity to interact with professors in ways that sometimes you don't always get a chance to. There's an expectation that you build relationships with your professors here at Bucknell. We don't use any teaching assistants or any GAD students. So in the same way that I'm talking to you is the same way we hope that you develop your relationship with your professors. But it's not a one-way street. In addition to you learning from your professors, they want to learn from you. So there's an interactive element that they want to have with you coming to Bucknell. So students that come to Bucknell, one of the blaring things we hear all the time is this sense of community and interactivity you have in this cross-disciplinary approach that we take. So even though I come in as a music major or as a business major, as a pre-med major or pre-law major, you're able to take classes in various different disciplines to get a feel for what you want to do. Yes, you'll have an idea coming to Bucknell, but you have the opportunity to explore. And that's what I love about liberal arts, is that the ability to come and explore and determine who you are. Because quite frankly, coming out of high school or as you approach your senior year, you're not really sure what you want to do. So a school like a Bucknell is going to allow you that opportunity to explore. And that's one of the unique things that makes Bucknell special.
Okay, great. What about campus culture? Sports, clubs, Greek life. I know when I was there, Greek life was big. Sports, I know basketball. You guys have a good basketball team.
Yeah. I would say that Bucknell continues to be a school that really has a substantial Greek life here on campus. But what I always tell students is don't feel like you have to participate in Greek life in order to have a meaningful experience here at Bucknell. You do not. There's over 200 clubs and activities that you can get involved with. There's always something going on at Bucknell that's going to help you get involved. There's 27 Division I sports here at Bucknell. That's a lot. Basketball, football, baseball, soccer, swimming and diving, field hockey, crew, lacrosse, just to name a few. But if you don't want to do those things, there's club sports you can get involved in, there's intramurals, but there's always something. One of the things that students love about Bucknell is there's always something going on. So you don't have to leave campus on the weekend. There's always something going on that's going to keep you engaged and keep you involved here at campus.
Okay. Or what about any fun traditions at your school?
Yeah, so one of the traditions I love, and let me just, before I talk about the traditions, let me just kind of set the stage, because depending on what you're looking for at school, Bucknell is classified as a liberal arts institution, okay? But as far as liberal arts institution goes, we're going to be a little bit in the larger size. We're about 3,700 students, so we're a bit larger when it comes to liberal arts colleges. Most liberal arts colleges are going to be somewhere between 1,300 students and about 2,500 students. Okay. So just to kind of set the stage for what you're looking for, but the campus itself is pretty wide and pretty spread out. So you get this sense that you're on a wider campus, a bigger campus. Some of the great traditions that we like to talk about is students who enter in through the Christy Mathis, I hope I'm saying it right, Christy Mathis gate. I hope I'm saying that right. Um, there's a, as you enter your journey through Bucknell, you come in through this gateway, and it signifies your journey to a new start at Bucknell. The only other time you go through that gate again, typically, is going to be when you graduate, signifying another step, that next journey part of your development. So those are kind of one of the two biggest traditions that you have. You also have things that are fun to do, like something called calf giving. I don't know if you remember having that as a student here. Calf giving is where all the cafeteria staff work to provide a Thanksgiving meal, a feast for students here on campus. And we do it every year, especially what's important for our families, our students who don't have families, especially our international students who don't have a family. And so it's a way for students to gather to celebrate Thanksgiving, the holiday season together. So those are just two of the things or three of the things that we do on campus that you would be involved in.
Okay, thanks. What about some of the top majors at Bucknell?
Well, I thought about this question, and that's a hard one to put an answer to. And here's why. At Bucknell, there are three different distinct colleges. There's the College of Arts and Sciences, the Freeman College of Management, and the College of Engineering. So when you choose a major at Bucknell, you're going to fall into one of those three colleges. But overall, I would say there are a number of majors that are really popular right now. Of the three colleges, engineering and management seem to be the most competitive schools, but you're going to find majors that come to my mind that are most popular are going to be management, business analytics, accounting, and finance. In terms of engineering, you're going to find civil engineering, mechanical engineering, biomedical engineering, just to name a few, electrical engineering, to name a few. And then the arts and sciences side, you'll find music, literature, art, dance, theater, biology, chemistry, pre-law, pre-med, or just some of the areas that we see big emphases on for students. So I wouldn't say there's one or two, there's a number that students really attract, that attract students to Bucknell in those areas, because the intimate class size levels, the student to teacher ratio at Bucknell is about 9-1. So for every 9 students, there's going to be 1 professor. So in those settings, no matter what major you choose, you're going to get a real good intimate learning experience.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, we hear a lot about sticker price versus actual price, because I know
Yeah.
college is very expensive. What can you tell about the tuition and the typical financial aid packages?
Yeah. So the typical tuition, at least for this year at least, is about $77,000 a year. That's the sticker price. Okay. It's about $77,000 a year, but that's not necessarily what you pay coming to Bucknell. At Bucknell, students are going to have access to FAFSA and to scholarships. We tell students to make sure you complete your FAFSA, make sure you complete your CSS profile, which stands for College Scholarship Service. FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. You want to have your parents complete both those things, because even though you think you're not in a place where you're going to need a lot of financial help, it's still important to fill those out, because some scholarships are going to be dependent upon that. Now, having said that, the average cost of Bucknell is going to be about $77,000 a year, but about 65% of our students receive some form of financial aid. The average financial aid package here at Bucknell is going to be about $43,000 that students get. Okay, and it varies. Okay, but there are a number of scholarships available to students. They relate to the arts, some relate to engineering, some relate to business. So I encourage students to make sure, in addition to completing your FAFSA, make sure you apply for scholarships. Very, very important, even if you don't think you need them. Completing the FAFSA is important because, as I said, if you want to apply for certain scholarships are dependent upon the fact you complete the FAFSA. So it's going to be important that you do that, okay?
Okay, great. What type of student do you typically accept? Like test scores, GPA,
Yeah, there's no official student that we accept at Bucknell, but here's what I see. Here's what makes a student competitive. And this is very important. Average GPAs, to be a competitive student, I'd say you really want to try to come in with at least a 3.5 GPA or higher. That's what you want to try to shoot for, okay? Because within that GPA is going to be a good indicator of your coursework, okay? Now, ideally, I want to see A's and B's solely on your transcript, ideally. Now, what happens if you get a C? It's okay. A C is not the end of the world. What we don't want to see is consistencies throughout your transcript. If that has happened to you, you need to be able to explain that. What has happened? Like a lot of students have dealt with COVID. Remember that time period where you had to do a lot of online learning. So you want to make sure that you can put context to why maybe your grades are not where you want them to be at, okay? Now recognize that Bucknell is going to be a selective school, so we're wanting to see certain types of grades coming in. So I'd say if you put yourself in about a 3.5 or higher, you might be competitive. And then also making sure you're doing A/B work primarily. Again, as I said, if you have a C or even a D, be able to explain it, talk about it, put some context behind it, okay? Now, we're going to be a test optional school, and I don't know if we got into that question yet,
Yeah, I
but
was going to ask. Yep.
yeah, so here's what I would say to you. Bucknell is truly a test optional school right now. So if you choose not to submit an SAT or an ACT, it does not hurt you in the slightest. About 50% of our students submit, 50% do not submit, okay? If you're going to submit, here's what I'm going to recommend. Make sure that your SAT is at least probably a 1300 or higher, okay? That's going to put you in the best position, I think. A 1300 or higher is going to make you most competitive. ACT, I'd say about a 31 or higher is going to make you competitive, okay? Now, if you don't have an ACT that's a 31 or higher, or an ACT that's a 1300 or higher, don't submit your scores. Because if you give me a score that's less than that, that could potentially impact you in a negative way. You are better off not submitting the scores at all, okay? And that way, if you don't submit the scores, then what do we judge then? Well, this is where your coursework is going to be important. Well, look at the classes that you're taking. So one of the questions that's going to be upcoming is, what about AP and honors and IB courses? So the question, here's what I would say to you. We're looking for students that have challenged themselves. So ideally, although honors are good, I want to see you taking APs. That tells me that you're taking I want to see you're taking the highest level courses available to you at the school. Now, what happens if your school doesn't offer AP courses? Well, then that's okay. You work with what you got. But if your school offers AP classes, do strive to be taking these things. Strive to be taking AP level courses, because that shows us that you're competing at the highest level of rigor. That shows us that you're taking high level courses and that you're going to be able to deal with the rigor that we offer you here at Bucknell. That's the important part about that, okay? Now, in the same way, are IB courses just as significant? Yes, they are. If you're taking IB courses, I would put them on par with AP courses. If you're taking IB courses, in the same way that if you're taking college level courses too. If you're taking college level courses at the local community college, they too show good rigor for us. So if you have an opportunity to take college level courses, definitely do that. Now, one other bit of advice is going to be this. If I want to say, let's say I want to be a pre-med major, then I should have a nice schedule full of classes that are going to be STEM-based or science-based, biology, chemistry. Make sure you take classes that show that you're taking classes in the area that you're most interested in. If I want to do accounting or finance, I should be taking accounting type classes. I should be taking accounting, finance type courses. If I want to do business courses, I should be taking, or business major, I should be taking classes in economics or macroeconomics. Things that show that I have an interest in those areas and that I put some weight behind what I'm coming to do. That helps us to see that you have a great interest in those areas, okay? Now, I realize I give you guys a lot on that part, but hopefully that makes sense to you.
Yeah. We always tell our students that, so that's great. And are you planning on staying test optional? Do you know, like?
Well, I would say this is a tricky question. I think we have no plans to move from it, but nothing's final, of course. Here's the thing, that the practicality of it is this, that the genie's out of the bottle. And so it's hard to go from being a test optional school to now somehow requiring testing. So that makes things harder, because the value of being test optional is that you expose a more selective institution to students who would have not otherwise applied, who may not have thought they would be competitive. Sometimes we have students who are just not good test takers, but it doesn't mean you're not a solid student. Okay. So the disadvantage of being test required is that it diminishes a whole group of students that are solid students, but just may not be good test takers. So if I was a betting person, I would say that we're likely to probably stay test optional. Many institutions that have gone test optional are likely to stay test optional. There are schools like MIT, for example, that have gone back to being requiring test scores. So certain schools will require it, but I think by and large, many of your schools um, that have become test optional are likely to stay that way. If I was a betting man.
Okay. Thank you. And you kind of touched on the IB, we are an IB World School. Do you prefer a student to be in a full IB diploma program versus taking a bunch of APs, or like how, because parents always ask us that.
Yeah, I think there's value into being the test diploma, getting the diploma. But as far as admissions is concerned, when I'm looking at you as a student, while it has a lot of weight that you've gotten the diploma, we look at you holistically. So that's only one part of your portfolio. So it won't be the make or break of you as a student. Some students will ask me, what happens if I take the AP exam, for example? Is the AP exam significant? It's important. If you can take it, that's great. It just kind of bolsters you, but it's not a requirement. Just as the IB diploma is not a requirement for you to be accepted. Because let's face it, some schools don't offer IB diplomas.
Yeah.
And so it would be unfair if we said, you as an IB diploma get access, but the student that did not have an IB diploma does not get access. So it's good to do it. It adds to your portfolio, not required, but it adds to you giving us a full completion of your capabilities as a student.
Okay. What about the essay? We always tell kids the essays is an important part.
You are 100% correct on that. Essay is really critical to your application. Remember, as I said, you're putting together a portfolio. So the essay is only one part, but let me give you some key things you want to be thinking about when you do your essay. If you're a junior, you should already be working on your essay this summer coming up. You should be working on it all summer. Write it, rewrite it, then write it again and rewrite it one more time. Now, the importance of your essay is going to be this. It has to tell a good story about who you are as a student, okay? I'm not saying to you that your essay has to be the best thing you've ever written. No, no. You don't have to impress me with words like "thus saith thou." And, you don't have to put crazy stuff in there like that. But tell me a good story about you. I don't want you to write about your dog or your neighbor. It's okay to talk about your parents and how they influence you, but at the end of the day, you have to tell me a story about you. At Bucknell, we're not going to do an interview with you. We're just not. So the only way I'm going to get to know you is if you tell me a good story about you and your essay. This is the importance of that. Now, I'm going to assume that you're not going to have mechanical issues. I'm going to assume that, okay? And this is why you write it and rewrite it, okay? It's okay to get input from your parents, from your school counselor, but at the end of the day, it has to be your story. I don't want to hear about them. I want to hear about your story. Make me say, as a counselor, make me say, wow, what an interesting student. We have to have that student here at Bucknell. If you write it in that way, you've done an effective job with your essay. Again, doesn't have to be the best thing you've ever written. But if I walk away saying, wow, I feel like I really know that student, you've done your job. Okay. Now, one other thing I'll say is this. Your essay doesn't have to be a sad story. Some students think I got to write a sob story. No, it can be a happy story. It can be a good story. But just make it a good story about you. Now, one other piece of advice I'm going to give you is this. If at all possible, try to avoid writing an essay about a sports injury. We see about 1,000 stories about an injury about sports. So this is why you have to be able to dig deep. I've got to be able to understand that intimate part of you. That's something about you that I don't know, that your application wouldn't tell me. And that's the importance of writing a good essay. So if you're a junior, work on it, start working on it in your junior year, work on it throughout the summer, write it, rewrite it. You do not want to find yourself going into your senior year having to be thinking about your essay. You want to have it done, have it ready to go.
Yeah, we always tell the kids that. So that's great you're repeating that. Yeah. What about activities? Do you look at the students' activities? How important is that?
Yes. Yeah. Activities are very important. Again, remember, you're putting together a portfolio. Your activities that you do say as much about you as also your essay. It tells us, are you altruistic? Meaning, do you care about others? It tells us where your passion lies. So what's the mistake that a lot of seniors make is they say, all right, I think I'm going to get involved this year as a senior.
Yeah.
No, ideally, what I want to see is you start being involved from ninth grade year or 10th grade year. So I want to see consistent involvement from ninth through 12th. It doesn't have to be the same thing, but you have to remember when you're talking about calibers of students that come to Bucknell, we're talking about students that have done everything under the sun. They're involved in about 10 different things sometimes, and they've done it sustained over 4 years. Now, there's certain things with some of our students who have family situations where you're not able to be as involved in activities. It may be that you're helping support your family. Maybe COVID was a big factor. So you had to get a job because maybe a parent lost their job. But the fact that you have a job and you're working to support your family, you may be babysitting, you're doing housework, those things matter too. Okay. So if you don't have a big resume when it comes to activities, but you have a history of helping your family, support your family, doing duties at home that have supported your family, that is also important too. We want to see involvement. We want to see a level of altruism that you've done work that shows that you care about others and you care about your community. These things are important, whether you're involved in your local church or involved in your food pantry, involved in helping with meals, prepare meals for people that are homeless, anything that shows that nature that you care about others beyond yourself and you're thinking about others, that's a good place to be at. That attracts us to a student when we see those types of things.
Okay, great. And I guess last thing, if you could offer one piece of advice to a student, either in the college search or application process, what would it be?
There are two things I would offer you. One is start early. Don't wait until the last minute because you'll become overwhelmed with the work you've got to do. In America, there's between 4,000 and 6,000 colleges and universities. There are a ton. And so the choices you have available to you can be overwhelming. So the process for starting early is going to be important. Now, here's the other bit of advice I'll give to you. Many institutions, including Bucknell, have different time periods which you can apply. Early decision one, early decision two, and regular decision, okay? Consider strongly looking at early decision one and two as you approach the application process. Now, here's the caveat. Early decision one and two is going to be a commitment by you. But the value that you get from early decision is that many colleges are just beginning to build their classes. So the competition to get into the school in the early part of the application process is less. So you really have used the system to increase your opportunity to be accepted by starting early in the process. So if you feel comfortable, consider doing early decision because although there's a commitment there, the acceptance rate is higher in early decision one and two than it is in regular decision. Now, with regular decision, you have increased competition. So the acceptance rate does go down. Be mindful of that. On the plus side, there's not a commitment, okay? For Bucknell, our application deadlines are going to be for early decision one, you need to apply by November 15th, and then we give you a decision by December 15th. For early decision two and regular decision, you apply by January 15th, and then we will give you a decision by February 15th for early decision two, generally speaking, and then we'll give you a decision in March for regular decision, okay? Regular decision, it doesn't mean you don't get into regular decision, but just recognize when you choose regular decision, it's going to be more competitive, okay? And there's not a guarantee. If you want to make the system work best for you, consider early decision as your friend, not just with Bucknell, but with other selective institutions like Bucknell as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask about because I know I applied early decision back in the day, and and so it seems that way. But some kids are like afraid, I think, of the commitment. But
right, if you know a school like Bucknell is where you want to go, then there's no fear. Now, the one thing I will tell you is that completing your FAFSA and your CSS profile, when you get your acceptance letter from Bucknell, you will also get your financial aid package, so you'll know. Now, there's a caveat built into the system that if for some reason that your family is not able to swing it financially, that is the one exception we can make it work where you're not obligated. But if you are in a position where your family is okay to handle it, we're expecting you to come if you do early decision. If for some reason your family can just not swing it, even with the financial aid, then that's one exception that we'll talk about. Now, you can also file an appeal for additional dollars at a Bucknell that'll also help you too if you don't get the financial aid package that you want. Okay, but the earlier you start the process, the value of early decision is if you get in, yes, you know you're squared, you know before Christmas. If you don't get in, you're off the hook.
Mhm.
So it's still a win-win in that respect.
Yeah. Okay, well, great. I think you were very helpful.
Yeah,
So we appreciate it.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
Well, it's been my pleasure talking with you all, and of course, I'm an available resource. So students will work through you and get connect with me if they want to find out more information. We can always talk.
Okay, great. All
All
right.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your help, and thank you for the time.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.